Have you ever felt the sheer weight of winning? The exhaustion that comes from defending every hill, every opinion, every dollar? The world teaches us that gain is ascension, but in the quiet moments, your soul knows the truth. Every victory you must cling to becomes another stone in your pocket, weighing you down. What if the laws of the Spirit were the opposite of the laws of the marketplace? What if letting go was the only way to become light enough to fly? There is a hidden physics to holiness, a secret ledger kept by the universe itself. And it does not measure what you have grasped, but what you have had the courage to release. Welcome to Drunken Philosopher, where there are truths that society doesn't want you to know. You stand with open hands, having been invited to the terrifying act of release. Let us first speak of a law far more powerful than supply and demand, a law that governs the ascent or the sinking of your very soul. This is the law of spiritual gravity. The world you know operates on a simple premise. The more you acquire, the greater you become. It is a philosophy of mass. You add titles, possessions, victories, and followers to your name, believing you are building a monument to yourself. But you are not building a monument. You are building an anchor. Each victory you must defend, each opinion you must uphold, each piece of praise you desperately need to keep. It is not a feather in your cap. It is another stone in your pocket. Have you ever felt it? The sheer crushing weight of your own success? The exhaustion of being right? The spiritual backache that comes from carrying the heavy baggage of your own reputation everywhere you go? This is spiritual gravity. It is the force that pulls you down, that binds your soul to the dense, noisy floor of the material world. Pride is not a gas that makes you float. It is lead. Resentment is not a fiery energy. It is a ball and chain you drag through your days. The constant need for control is not a sign of power. It is the frantic effort of a person trying to hold up a mountain that is slowly crushing them. The world has sold you a collection of beautiful, polished anchors and told you they were treasures. The divine invitation to lose is not a call to be diminished. It is a lesson in spiritual aerodynamics. It is God, the master physicist of the soul, whispering to you, "Let go of the ballast. You were made to fly." Every time you choose to absorb a slight instead of retaliating, you are cutting a rope. Every time you let go of your fierce need to win a small, pointless argument, you are dropping a sandbag. Every time you perform an act of quiet generosity, giving away a little time or a little money without needing a plaque or a post to commemorate it, you are unhooking a heavy anchor from your spirit. And what is the feeling that follows? It is not the sting of loss. It is the dizzying, terrifying, exhilarating feeling of lightness. It is the feeling of a hot air balloon when the final tether is sliced away. It is the sudden upward drift of a soul remembering its native element. You were not designed to be a beast of burden, hauling the weight of your own ego. You were designed to be a vessel of the Spirit, light and responsive, ready to move where the holy wind blows. This is not a metaphor. It is the fundamental mechanics of the spiritual realm. The mind that has not been awakened, the one that the source text calls the poor mind, is a mind that has fallen in love with its own gravity. It measures its worth by its weight. It polishes its chains and arranges its anchors in a pleasing display for others to admire. It cannot imagine letting go of a single stone because it believes the stones are all that it is. But the renewed mind, the soul that is awakening to the divine, understands that true wealth is not mass, but mobility. True power is not weight, but lightness. It is the freedom to ascend. God does not ask you to suffer a loss because He enjoys your pain. He asks you to release your grip because He wants to give you the sky, and you cannot grasp the sky with fists full of stones. He is not trying to empty you. He is trying to unburden you for the real journey, the real ascent. But how can we trust this process? How do we know these small, painful losses are not simply losses? It is because while we are busy dropping the dead weight, a different kind of accounting is taking place, on a ledger hidden from the world's eyes. For every action in this life, there are two books, two ledgers, where the event is recorded. The first is the one the world holds open for all to see. It is bound in leather and pride, and its pages are filled with loud, sharp, frantic entries. This is the ledger of the ego. When you secure a victory, a promotion, a public acknowledgement, it is written there in bold, celebratory ink. Your balance swells. When you suffer a loss, a slight, a moment of foolishness, it is recorded in a cruel, crimson red. Your balance shrinks. We are taught from birth to stare at this ledger, to live our lives in service to its bottom line. We check it daily, hourly, obsessively, praying for black ink and dreading the red, for we are told that this book is the final record of our worth. But while you are staring at that loud public ledger, another book is being kept. It is a quiet ledger, bound not in leather but in light. Its pages are not paper, but the very fabric of your soul. And the accountant who keeps this book is not the fickle crowd, but the eternal spirit. This is the universe's secret ledger, and its accounting principles are the inverse of the world's. When you claw your way to a petty victory, stepping on another to get there, the world's ledger shouts, "Profit." But the divine accountant dips his quill in shadow and makes a note in the book of your soul. One measure of grace spent, one portion of humility lost, a debt has been incurred. And then comes the moment of your holy loss. You choose to yield, you choose to let go of the insult, you choose to pay the unfair price. You allow yourself to appear foolish in the eyes of the ambitious. In that moment, the world's ledger screams in red ink, loss, deficit, folly. Your ego feels the sting. The crowd may whisper. But in the stillness of the unseen realm, the divine accountant smiles. He dips his quill in starlight and writes a magnificent entry on the credit side of your soul. One measure of pride surrendered, one portion of peace inherited, one link to the eternal forged. What the world recorded as a liability, heaven has recorded as a priceless asset. This is the great secret of the wise, the saints, the ones who walk with a quiet smile. They have stopped reading the world's vulgar, chaotic book. Their eyes are fixed on the secret ledger. They understand that true wealth is the accumulating balance of these holy credits. This is the treasure that no market crash can touch, that no thief can steal, that no moth or rust can destroy. It is a wealth of character, a wealth of peace, a wealth of inner stillness, a wealth of trust in the one who keeps the only books that matter. When you live for this ledger, the world loses its power over you. Its praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Its criticism becomes unfortunate but irrelevant. You are no longer performing for the crowd. You are living for an audience of one. You stop trying to manage the chaotic stock price of your public reputation and start focusing on the slow, steady, compounding interest of your spiritual integrity. The rich mind is not one that has mastered the world's ledger. It is one that has simply learned that it is a fiction, a temporary dream. The truly rich mind has learned to read the secret ledger and knows that every act of letting go, every moment of choosing humility over hubris, is the most profitable transaction a soul can ever make. This divine accounting isn't just a record of past events. It is a living, breathing principle. For every entry of release on heaven's ledger, a corresponding space is cleared within you, a holy emptiness that the universe, in its love for you, cannot allow to remain empty for long. This divine accounting, this secret ledger, is not merely a record, it is a catalyst. For every time you allow a loss to be written in the world's book, you are doing more than dropping spiritual weight. You are engaging in the mystical art of excavation. You are creating a space inside of you, a vacuum. And there is a fundamental law of the cosmos, both physical and spiritual. The universe abhors a vacuum. It cannot allow a true void to exist. Something will always rush in to fill it. From the moment you are born, the world rushes to fill you. It fills you with its noise, its ambitions, its fears, its opinions, its desperate need for you to be something, to be full. Your mind becomes filled with anxieties and plans. Your heart becomes filled with desires and resentments. Your ego swells to fill every last corner of your being, leaving no room for anything else. We walk around as sealed, pressurized vessels, full of ourselves. And we wonder why we cannot hear the voice of God. We wonder why we do not feel the presence of the Spirit. It is because there is no room, there is no empty space for the sacred to enter. The inn is full, and so the holy loss is an act of deliberate, courageous emptying. When you surrender your need to win an argument, you are not just taking a social loss, you are creating a pocket of silence in a mind that is usually screaming with its own rightness. When you forgive a debt, financial or emotional, and let the grudge go, you are not just being naive. You are clearing out a cluttered, poisoned room in the mansion of your soul. When you choose to serve in secret with no one to applaud you, you are deflating the balloon of your own ego, creating a space where true humility can finally take a breath. At first, this emptiness is terrifying. The silence that follows the release of your pride can feel like a death. The ego screams in protest, for a vacuum is its greatest fear. It will try to rush back in immediately, filling the new space with justifications, with renewed anger, with plans for future revenge. It will tell you that this emptiness is weakness, that it is nothingness, that you have been diminished. This is the moment of your greatest test and your greatest faith. Can you hold the vacuum open? Can you sit in that quiet, vulnerable, empty space for more than a second? Can you resist the urge to fill it yourself? If you can simply hold the space, then the second part of the law engages. The Spirit, which has been politely waiting outside the crowded door of your heart, rushes in. It does not flood you with violence. It fills you with a gentle, pervasive grace. It is like the way light floods a room when the shutters are finally opened. It is like the way water from a deep spring seeps into dry, thirsty ground. The emptiness you created with the loss of your pride is filled with a divine peace that is more satisfying than any victory. The space you cleared by releasing a resentment is filled with a love that is warmer than any apology you might have received. The vacuum left by your shrinking ego is filled with the quiet, unshakable presence of God Himself. This is the divine exchange. You give God your broken, heavy, noisy things, your pride, your anger, your need for control. You place them on the altar and let them burn away into nothing. And in return, He fills the space they occupied with His own substance, His peace, His love, His stillness. This is the secret of the mystics, the saints, the ones who glowed with an inner light. They were not people who were full of themselves. They were people who had mastered the art of becoming empty so that God could make them full. And a person who has learned to live in this state of holy exchange, constantly emptying and being filled, begins to exhibit a strange and resilient kind of power, a strength that looks nothing like the world's brittle force. A person who learns to live in this state of holy exchange, this rhythm of emptying and being filled, begins to exhibit a strange and resilient kind of power, a strength that looks nothing like the world's brittle force. The world teaches us to admire the oak tree. It is a monument of strength. Its trunk is thick, its bark is rugged, its branches claw at the sky in defiance. When the wind blows, the oak does not bow. It resists. It meets the force with its own brute force. It is the very symbol of pride, of dominance, of an unshakable will. We are all taught to be oaks, to be strong, to be rigid, to never back down, to let the world break itself against our unbending resolve. But the spiritual master, the one who walks with God, knows a deeper secret. They know that the oak's greatest strength is also its most fatal flaw. For when a storm comes that is greater than the oak's own power, a hurricane of accusation, a tempest of injustice, a whirlwind of loss, the oak has only one option. Because it cannot bend, it must break. Its magnificent trunk splinters. Its deep roots are torn violently from the earth. Its pride leads directly to its ruin. Its resistance is its end. Now, consider the reed growing by the riverbank. It is slender, humble, and unimpressive. The world barely notices it. When that same great storm comes, the reed does not resist. It practices the holy art of yielding. It bows. It lays itself down, sometimes flat against the wet earth, honoring the power of the wind. An observer would call it weak, cowardly, a thing of no substance. But when the storm is past, when the fury is spent, the mighty oak lies in shattered pieces across the landscape. And the reed, which absorbed the force by yielding to it, simply stands up again, still rooted, still whole, glistening quietly in the sun. This is the strength of the surrendered soul. The small, obvious loss is the act of bowing to the wind. It is not an act of cowardice. It is an act of profound, strategic, and warrior-like wisdom. It is the understanding that not every force is meant to be resisted. Not every battle is yours to fight. When anger comes at you like a gale, the oak-like ego braces itself, meets anger with more anger, and the result is a violent, soul-shattering clash. But the reed-like spirit yields. It does not argue. It does not absorb the poison. It lets the force of the fury blow past it, preserving its own internal peace, protecting its own vital roots. This requires more discipline than 1,000 brawls. It is the ultimate form of emotional and spiritual self-control. This is the strength God speaks of when He says, "The meek shall inherit the earth." The meek are not the weak. They are the reeds. They are the souls who have their own strength so perfectly under the command of the Spirit that they no longer need to prove it. Their power is not in resistance, but in resilience. And where does this resilience come from? The oak is rooted in the shallow soil of its own strength. It trusts in itself, and so it is limited by itself. But the reed is rooted in something far deeper. It is rooted in the ever-flowing river of God's presence. It can afford to bend, it can afford to yield, it can afford to look weak, because its life does not depend on its own rigid posture. Its life depends on its constant hidden connection to its living source. This is the ultimate strength. It is the strength Jesus demonstrated when he stood before his accusers. He, the one who could command legions of angels, stood in silence. He yielded to the storm of human hatred. He took the greatest loss in the history of the cosmos. To the world, it was the ultimate defeat. But it was, in fact, the ultimate victory. For in his yielding, he broke not himself, but the very power of death. He absorbed all the world's violence and stood up again. And so, a soul that has learned this divine art of yielding no longer strives or resists. It simply is. It begins to emanate a quiet music, a spiritual frequency born not of frantic action, but of a deep and knowing peace. A soul that has learned this divine art of yielding, this sacred strength of the reed, no longer lives in a state of reaction or resistance. It simply is. And in its being, it begins to emanate a quiet music, a spiritual frequency born not of frantic action, but of a deep and knowing peace. Consider this. The world is a storm of chaotic frequencies. It is the loud, jarring static of fear, of greed, of comparison, of endless, anxious striving. And most souls, without realizing it, are tuned to this station. They vibrate with its restless energy, which is why they feel perpetually unsettled, perpetually anxious, perpetually one step away from the peace they crave. But the Spirit, the divine reality, hums on a different frequency altogether. It is a clear, deep, steady tone. It is the note that holds the cosmos together. It is the frequency of love, of truth, of unshakable peace. And the entire journey we have spoken of, dropping the weight of pride, ignoring the world's ledger, creating the sacred vacuum, learning to yield like the reed, all of this has not been the destination. It has been the tuning. Every act of holy loss, every small surrender, has been the slow, deliberate turning of a dial inside your soul, moving it away from the world's deafening static and bringing it into alignment with the clear, quiet hum of heaven. And when you are finally in tune, a miracle occurs. It is the principle of resonance. If you strike a tuning fork in a room, another tuning fork across the room, if it is calibrated to that exact same frequency, will begin to vibrate and sing in harmony without ever being touched. It does not strive to sing. It sings because it is in tune. This is the final stage of the journey. A soul that has been tuned to the frequency of peace will begin to resonate with the peace of God, and that peace will fill it effortlessly. A soul tuned to the frequency of love will find love flowing to it and through it without struggle. A soul tuned to the frequency of divine purpose will find that opportunities and ideas that match that purpose are drawn to it as if by a magnetic force. This is the great reversal. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer strive, you resonate. You stop hunting for wisdom, for peace, for the right path, because your very being has become a beacon for those things. You have become the tuning fork, and the universe now brings to you whatever matches your song. This was the true goal all along. Not to master the tactic of losing, but to become the kind of person who no longer needs tactics. Your character becomes your strategy. Your peace becomes your power. Your silence becomes your most eloquent argument. This is the ultimate form of discernment. You no longer need a checklist to decide if a person or an opportunity is right for you. You can feel it. Your spirit, now humming at its proper frequency, can instantly sense dissonance. A person with a chaotic, duplicitous spirit will feel like jarring noise to you. A deal predicated on greed will feel out of tune. Your own inner resonance becomes your infallible compass, guiding you toward what is in harmony with your soul and away from what would create static. This is the true hidden blessing we sought from the beginning. It is not a future reward in heaven. It is a present reality on earth. It is the profound, unshakable joy of a soul that is finally vibrating in perfect harmony with its Creator. The world will tell you to build a fortress, stone by heavy stone. But the Spirit whispers, weave a basket instead, with open hands and a quiet heart. For the treasures of the world are heavy, and they sink in the river of time. But a surrendered soul is light, and it floats on the breath of God.